We live in a world in which terrible things are happening. Our response oftentimes is execution. What does Jesus have to say about that? Hello, my name is Father Mike Manning. God bless you. Thank you very much for watching. We have a great program for you today. We're going to be wrestling with a situation that is pervasive in our country, and yet we need to really look at it from a Christian perspective, and it's the death penalty. I have a very special guest. Sister Helen, thank you so very much for being with us.
Great
God
to be
bless
here.
you. Thanks for coming all the way from Louisiana.
Yeah.
God bless you for what you're doing. You're a person who's become a real standout with challenging all of us to make sure that we're understanding about this death penalty that many people are taking for granted. And you're bringing a challenge to us, a challenge that perhaps is very much in line with the gospel. But before we get into that, you're a nun, and you've given your life to Christ. Could you tell us a little bit about that, your call to give your life to Christ as a nun? How did that all get started?
Well, you know, I grew up in a Catholic family, learned to pray, attending Eucharist, and knowing that the gospel of Jesus was about giving yourself over for other people in service. And so I became a nun to do that. And it was
couldn't you do that in married life? Why did being a nun stand out to you?
I knew that as a sister, I was always going to be allotted hunks of time for prayer and also for study. And it would give me a freedom, an agency, to be able to move among the community in a way that if I did have a family, I would not be. It was always about loving for me and how to love. And so when I joined the Sisters in New Orleans...
What community do you belong to?
Sisters of St. Joseph. Now, we have branches all around.
Yes.
And this awakening to Christ and the death penalty, you know, when I became a nun, I never dreamed I was going to be going on to death row. But the awakening to Christ was around the gospel that Jesus was always on the side of marginated people, poor people, people others despised.
For example, what do you mean?
Well, like all the people in the inner city. I grew up in white privilege. My father was a successful lawyer. Baton Rouge, Louisiana, the only way I knew African-American people were as our servants. I wasn't connected with poor people. But there was an awakening in the whole community. Our sisters, Vatican II, woke up the Catholic Church to be involved in the world. And nobody took that more seriously than the sisters. I'm writing about this right now in my spiritual memoir, and it's called River of Fire, My Spiritual Journey. So Christ is always unfurling inside of us. And the call came that I realized I'm separated from the poor people in New Orleans, and Christ would be among the poor. I needed to go there.
So it's not just going to church and saying holy things as a nun, but it's really maybe getting your hands dirty.
Right, or just being charitable to people, especially those in the little tidal pool around us.
You started as a nun doing what? And
teaching 7th and 8th graders, English religion, loved it.
Yes,
Always loved everything I've done.
Yes.
Then I was a director of religious ed in a Catholic parish in New Orleans, working with adults. Loved that too. But it was this call, this nagging about social justice and the poor. At first, I really resisted that. I said, we are nuns, not social workers. And Jesus said to love everyone. And as long as we're loving and we're being charitable, what do you mean social justice? And I resisted it. And so then when I got it, it was really grace. I heard a talk. I heard Jesus. I knew a lot about Jesus. I've been praying my whole religious life. I'd been studying scriptures. I've been giving retreats myself. And I heard that Jesus was among poor people. Why did it take me so long? I don't know. But when I heard this talk, and it's the beginning of my book, Dead Man Walking, I talk about my spiritual journey in there. And I went over to live among poor African American people in the city of New Orleans, and everything unfolded from there. Because just like my classmates would talk about when we graduated from high school, what college we were going to, everybody had someone in prison. I'd never been in a prison before. 2.5 years later, I am in the execution chamber when this man, Patrick Saunier, was killed, was electrocuted to death. First we wrote letters. He had nobody to come see him. I'm looking at the scriptures in a whole new way, because when you start getting involved with people, the scriptures start coming alive. How many times had I meditated on, I was hungry, you gave me to eat, I was in prison, and you came to me. Now I'm thinking of the man, writing the letters. He had no visitors. I wrote to tell him I'd come see him, and I did. And he was locked on the other side of me in a heavy mesh metal screen separating us, and I looked into his face. And you want to talk about grace, I thought his face had to look different if he had murdered somebody, that his eyes would be mean, his jaw. And I saw the humanness of his face. It shocked me.
Yes.
And I went, oh my God, he's a human being.
Yeah.
And I got a grace, and it never has left me. It's going to be tested, but it never left me. He is worth more than the worst thing he's ever done in his life. And that's the gospel. Yeah. We are all worth more than the worst thing we've ever done. The 2 hours flew by. He was just talking. He was so glad to have a visitor. And then I began then to descend into the journey. I'm going to find out about the victims that he killed.
Yeah.
And what you talked about earlier in the teaser, when you talked about the reason the death penalty is so tough for us, those that call ourselves pro-life, and we're for life, you know, for life across the board.
Not just the death penalty, but also
unborn
abortion.
Children to people with Alzheimer's, that some people say, no, well, let's euthanize them.
Euthanizing, get rid of them, yes, yes.
That's innocent life. But these are people who stepped across the line and did unspeakable acts. Well, this Patrick Saunier, who was the first one, he's the first story in Dead Man Walking, and his brother had killed 2 precious teenage kids who had gone to a football game on a Friday night in November, and their parents never saw them alive again. And these 2 brothers, these kids are found lying face down in a sugarcane field in Louisiana, and they've both been shot in the back of the head. And the girl, Loretta Bork, was raped. And when I found out what they did, because I started visiting both brothers, this revulsion and this outrage over 2 innocent kids being ripped out of life. And then the guilt. Like, what am I doing? I'm the spiritual advisor to the 2 people who killed these people. Yes. What am I doing?
Yes, yes.
So, boy, you're clinging on
of course,
to the gospel message, but it's
you're
tough.
You're going this way and that way.
No. You know, it's a deep ambivalence. You know, there are 2 arms on the cross, and it stretches you. The perpetrator on this arm of the cross, victim's family suffering on this of the cross. And I made a terrible mistake. I thought, well, the victims' families are not going to want to see me because I'm spiritual advisor to the 2 people who killed their kids, and I stayed away from them. I didn't write a note. I didn't do anything. And when I met them, it couldn't have been a worse time to meet them, because it was at a public pardon board hearing, the last step before Patrick was executed. Eddie got life, and that's when I met the victim's family. And of course, they're coming to that pardon board meeting because they're being told this is the way you get justice for your dead children. So you have all your friends there, and I ran into them there. And one of the families was angry at me. I don't blame them. I've done it all wrong. How could they not see me as the enemy? But surprised by grace with the other family, the boy's family, Lloyd LeBlanc and his wife. David was their only son. He walked right up to me, and he said, Sister, all this time you've been visiting with those 2 brothers, and you didn't want to come see us? You can't believe the pressure we're under with the death penalty. Because he was deeply Christian, and he knew what Jesus was calling him to do. But everybody around him was saying, Lord, you got to be for the death penalty, or look like you didn't love David. And he was caught, and he had no one, and I wasn't there for him. He said, "Sister, you need to come walk in our shoes, and you need, I go and pray in this little chapel. Come pray with me." And I did, and I knelt alongside this man. He's the hero of my book, Dead Man Walking, because he taught me the path of forgiveness. And what he taught me was that forgiveness is not first and foremost what you do for someone else. Like, I forgive you, to lift people of their burden of guilt. He said, when all those people were saying to me, "You got to be for the death penalty," he said, "I tried to go there." And I said, "Yeah, I want to see him dead. Yeah, I wish I could pull the switch." And he said, "But I didn't like what that did to me. I've always been a kind man. I like to help people. And I'm getting this hatred and bitterness coming into me." And I said to myself, they killed our son, but I'm not going to let them kill me. I'm going to do what Jesus said.
I want to know, what is it that bites in us to want to support a death penalty? Could we talk a little bit about that?
It's a very human thing.
I want to know what's going on, and please, would you listen to this and then come on right back. We'll be right with you. I don't know about you, but I believe in prayer. I really believe that the Lord hears us when we pray, and I believe that miracles can happen when you pray, and those miracles might not happen if you don't pray. I know you share that faith with me. Well, in my excitement about prayer, I've prepared something for you. It's called Pocket Prayers. Look how small it is. It's filled with wonderful Catholic prayers, the Our Father, the Hail Mary, the Creed, the mysteries of the Rosary, the acts of contrition, the morning and evening prayers, and there's some special Catholic prayers that I know you love, like the Memorare. But it's also filled with very special prayers, prayers that are going to touch you day in and day out in your life. One of the prayers that I like very much is the prayer for healing. And even a prayer in financial problems. And oh my, we're struggling with that now. There's even a prayer for getting ready to drive. Please, I would love for you to have this. For your donation of $1 or more, this is something that you can put in your pocket, you can put in your purse, and pull out at all kinds of exciting times, or even waiting times. It's something you can use at work, you can use it at home, you can use it at school, when you're waiting for a bus or you're waiting for the doctor. And I'd love you to get this and perhaps pass it on to a friend, a wonderful gift. Please, would you contact us? You can do it by email, by letter. Please pick up the phone and also contact us through the web page. Remember, Pocket Prayers, a powerful way of making prayer alive and God coming into your life with blessings and peace. Thank you. Please, let me hear from you. Sister Helen, we struggle with the death penalty in our own hearts and in our own as a nation. Vengeance is a natural reaction. When somebody hurts someone we love, we naturally want to have vengeance. How do you respond to that natural inclination?
Yeah, well, it begins in all of us, you know.
Yeah.
Because we see the pain of the victim's family. And so there's a part in all of us who says, well, he doesn't deserve to live.
Yeah.
That's what the death penalty's for. But the more you get into this issue, the more you get into, well, like, who deserves the killing? Because guards have to carry this out for us. And these are people who are working in prisons. And Lloyd LeBlanc and these victims' families are showing us the way. And the way Bud Welch, whose daughter was killed in the Oklahoma City bombing, put it was, even if he could have watched Timothy McVeigh be put to death, he knew when he would come home, the chair would be just as empty where Julie had sat than before he watched the state or the feds kill Timothy McVeigh.
What about fear? What about fear?
Fear, look.
We're afraid.
We're driven by fear.
Yes.
We're driven by fear, so we're made to think these people are the worst of the worst. We demonize them. They were gang members. They're going to kill other people. And because we separated from each other, we don't know real people.
Yeah.
We believe that. And, of course, every night before you go to bed, evening news is going to tell you about any crime that happened in the city. No matter what peaceful things happen, it builds fear up in people. So we say we got to kill the worst of the worst to be safe. And now we're finding out 30 years down the road of doing the death penalty, the states that do the death penalty the most have the greatest violence in their cities. It's got nothing to do with making us safe. Every state now has in place life without parole for the worst of the worst murders. They're not going to get out and we can be safe.
Every state has that?
Every state.
Excellent.
Every state.
Now, what about, you got to tell me about this, about the Bible. I mean, I can read the Bible, and listen, let me tell you that God says that it's okay to kill. It's okay to stone somebody if they do something wrong. I mean, if they're sleeping with a man's wife, or if their child is unruly. What do you say to that? Come on.
But you know, you can always, the Bible was written, it's religious experience over 2,000 years. And you can always go, and it's called proof texting, to say, hey, look, God said this.
Yes.
But we need to be consistent. And like the eye for an eye. Yeah. I talk to audiences all over this country. Yes. And I can hear people in chorus. Come on, everybody give the quotable quote from the Bible, an eye for an eye. What did Jesus say about an eye for an eye? How come we never quote Jesus? You've heard it said, an eye for an eye. But I say to you.
He passes on with that.
And it's because we have to move from retributive justice, of causing
what's
pain.
That? What does that mean? What does that mean?
It means we do retribution. Retribution means one thing. You kill, you die.
Okay.
And I've heard this
eye for eye.
Trials for the death penalty, where you actually have a prosecuting attorney saying, look at that family. They lost their daughter. They've had the ultimate loss. So you got to give the ultimate punishment, because only that is what is just. Anything less than death will be a dishonoring of that victim. And we have to bring that we need to be a culture of life. And so when we enshrine that death or violence is the way to make ourselves safe, we are taking the worst behavior of people in our society and we're imitating them. We're saying the only thing we can do to be just is to kill them. And it's just shot with, you know, moral considerations that it's really unworthy of us.
Is there a connection, you spoke of this life thing, is there a connection between abortion and you mentioned euthanasia and the death penlety?
All these are what we call,
do you see a
pro-life issues. We want to be pro-life. You know, Catholics are really have leading the charge in a lot of ways. Pope John Paul put the death penalty with the other pro-life issues in St. Louis in '99 when he said no to abortion, no to euthanasia, no to physician-assisted suicide.
And he spoke to the warden, I think, didn't he, before an execution?
That's on an individual case, but this is putting the issue
but
together.
That was his attitude, though. Try to stop it.
But it's even more important than for an individual life is to understand that any death penalty is connection with a culture of death. And when the Pope said, put the death penalty in, and no to the death penalty, which is cruel and unnecessary, even those among us who have done a terrible crime have a dignity that must not be taken from them. And by that he meant not to make a hero of people,
Gotcha.
not say, we are horrified at what they do. But when you render a person defenseless, I've accompanied 6 human beings, chained hand and foot, surrounded by guards, who are being walked to their death. And you know what they say to me? Sister, please pray God holds up my legs. There is no dignity in this death. And when I had a chance to have a direct dialogue with Pope John Paul, and not just with the Pope, but with Catholics all over this country, we all struggle with this. And I said, where is the dignity in this? We can be safe. It's traditionally in all the churches, the reason the churches supported the death penalty as Christians was to defend society, because they didn't have prisons, they didn't have a way. But now we do. And so we can defend.
We don't
life.
have to be afraid. We don't have to be afraid of someone if we know that they're going to be held, if they need to be held in prison for the rest of their life.
Be. I mean, and that's really gone into effect in the last 15 years in this country. People need to be educated on that, though, because they'll say, oh, but if we don't execute them, then they're going to kill again. So we have to be educated. We got to know the facts, and And so we have to choose a life road. And people are ready for this. I've been doing this for over 20 years, talking to the American public about the death penalty. And believe me, if they weren't getting it, I'd be dead on the road.
I think they are.
But they do get it,
Yeah.
because they just need to be brought there.
Tell me about that cross that you have on your chest there.
well,
Tell me about that, would you?
It's the only cross I've ever had that was actually purchased with blood.
What do you mean?
And, well, the story's in Dead Man Walking, but Patrick Saunier was the first man I visited on death row. His brother had gotten 2 life sentences. Those teenagers who were killed that I was talking about.
Yes.
Well, the brother is actually the one who did the killing that night, and his brother was executed for what he did. And I was with Pat, and to thank me, the only way he could get money was to sell his plasma. And he got money, and he got another prisoner to make this cross for me. And I treasure this, because this is from the brother who did the killing and whose brother died in his stead. And so I wear it, and it always reminds me of the struggle. One of the things we have to look at is we're only human, and we're playing God when we decide some people are going to die, and we're going to choose who it is and set up a system to do it. And who are we? We don't create life, and yet we're going to decide, God's finished with you, and we're sending you into eternity.
Yeah.
There's an arrogance in that, and we do it all wrong. We're making all kinds of mistakes. We could never get it right.
What do I do with this? What do I do as I'm sitting home listening to what you're saying? Where do I go? How can I get excited? I should pray, I suppose, but what concretely could I start to do to maybe turn this around to be a little more in line with what Jesus is calling us to?
Well, what we're all called to do, and see, thank God we live in community. Nobody has to go to a mountaintop, figure all this out for themselves. We begin to reach out in the community.
Right.
And if we take both arms of the cross, any believer in Jesus, to reach out to victims of violent crime, to help them, also to reach out to prisoners. And there are ministries in all the Christian communities around this country. And that's what we want to do. We also want to learn, because the conversion process of coming to align ourselves with the gospel values of Jesus, who said, I say to you, love your enemy. I say, pray for those who persecute you. Well, Lloyd LeBron taught me what that meant.
Yeah.
And it doesn't just mean, oh, well, yeah, I'll forgive you. But it means, the way Lloyd put it was, everybody was telling me I had to be for the death penalty because David was my son. And he said, I finally went to a place, I said, they killed our boy, but I'm not going to let them kill me. I'm not going to let that hatred and bitterness. Now, most of us don't have to deal, please God, with somebody being killed, but we all know what it is to be hurt. We all know what it is to be betrayed, or to be ignored, or to have people hurt us. And we got to decide on our response. Are we going to respond in kind, or are we take the love that is in us, the God's grace that is in us, to be the loving one? And you start with a small group of people. You know how Jesus talked about yeast in the dough?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And about wheat and weeds coming up side by side. You don't have to convert the whole parish.
That's great.
Just go start with 2 or 3 people and start doing it. Like Gandhi said that. Be the change you seek. Just start living it. Start doing it.
We're gonna come back. We're gonna break. But I want to hear something about. You talked to me about. Tim Robbins has written a play for young people on Dead Man Walking. Huh?
Yes.
Stay tuned. We're going to hear some exciting things and also get a chance to pray for some of the things that you've corresponded with. Please stay tuned. You and I believe in prayer. Prayer changes everything. And I've prepared a wonderful little gift for you to help with your prayer. It's called Pocket Prayers. It's wonderful. It can fit in your purse, in your pocket. And you can pull it out and pray the Catholic prayers that we know, but also some of the special prayers that I've composed that I hope will allow God to come into your life with greater force. Please remember the prayer for healing, financial help, and remember also a simple prayer that is going to be said before you start driving. Remember, this can be used at work, at home, at school, while you're waiting for a bus or waiting for a doctor. It's also a wonderful gift to share with people you love. For only $1 or more, you can have this. Please contact us. Let me know that you're part of this ministry in a great way. God bless you. Sister, you told us that the movie, which was really great because it really gave an accentuation with Susan Sarandon getting an Academy Award, and there were a lot of nominations. But now Tim Robbins has done something with the script to allow young people to get involved. You wanted to tell us about that.
He's written a stage play, and the movie, and actually my book, just brings people over to both sides of this issue. And he's done the same thing. Stage play. He's holding off the commercial production of it on Broadway or whatever to give it over to the young people of the country in order to get deeper reflection and discourse for high schools and also for universities and colleges.
That sounds exciting.
Over. And I've seen the plays, and so they're everybody. They're the guard, they're the mother of the one.
Oh, so each school takes on a...
They do the play.
I gotcha.
They do it. Wow. And then, in classes, 2 departments pick it up, so you have discourse.
Oh, excellent.
And the gospel's always been about awakening us up, educating us, then activating us. That's what it's all about. So anyway, and so people can go on to the web page and find out it's DMW for Dead Man Walking, play.org. And there's an interactive web page. They can see what other schools have done.
Ooh, that's exciting, yeah?
And it makes it come alive.
Sure.
It makes it, and it really brings you there, because it doesn't start off with death penalty's wrong.
Yeah.
Here are the 15 reasons why you as a Christian should be opposed to it. You get in there, and you're going back and forth in your own heart, and that's the way the play unfolds. And then it leaves it with you. Take it.
Well, let's pray. Let's pray over these people. We got some wonderful, I'm looking at here from Oklahoma, to help me to recover from a brain tumor. Healing for the priest and the family, looking for that. This is from New York. Would you lay your hands on this? And would you say a little prayer, would you, over these people?
Jesus, we know that when we gather in your name that you're with us. We know that your love and healing wants to extend to us at every moment of our lives, that your healing grace is always present to us. And we, in love, extend our prayers and our concern for all of these intentions and all of those that are in the hearts of people who are watching us this day. Lead us, teach us to greater and greater love, and teach us to be able to align our lives with yours, loving in ways even those among us who are the most unlovable. Heal our hurts, our wounds, all the things that separate us from each other and make us feel isolated and alone. In your name, Jesus, we pray.
And may Jesus' love for you always make you smile.